Hello, everybody. We are Team Chester within the Industry One. My name is Caleb Cameron, and I'm here with David Rout and Molly Hayes. We will be discussing our journey within the Capsim simulation competition for fall 2020. We will highlight our initial competitive strategies and the adjustments that we needed to make, in which arrived us to our realized strategy. We will also highlight in which who we felt were our key head-to-head competitors within the competition. Next, we will explain what our team core competencies were, as well as giving a recap of our overall performance and highlight the life lessons that we learned by being in this journey. We will begin with our initial strategy. We had an integrated cost leadership and differentiation approach. We felt that having low pricing will allow us to have a large market share. Also, by utilizing TQM would give us the ability to create quality products at a very low price. We also decided to maximize the mean time before failure in all of our products besides the low end in order to have a higher quality product. By doing so, we had a few consequences. We saw that our margins were very low in the beginning of the rounds, and we decided to shift our approach to how we were going to make a profit. So we decided to switch it over to having a broad differentiation. In the next slide, I will explain that. So for our realized strategy, with the environmental changes in the industry shifts, we developed a broad differentiation approach. With this approach, we maximized our profits and had a substantial presence within various markets. Our goal and our approach to do so, we increased our prices to pretty much the highest acceptable ones to our customers. We also cut cost within our other business operations. That includes low investments into capacity as well as low investments into automations. We pretty much wanted to use the necessary assets within the company in order to create the most profit. We also did not focus on introducing any new products. That allowed us to focus on our current product line and helped us achieve some of our common goals as a company. Here, we will discuss the head-to-head competitors that we felt were identical to us, or at least similar to what we were trying to achieve as a company. Team Andrew and Team Digby were very close in various aspects of scores as far as profits, cumulative profits, returns on equity, and returns on assets. Team Andrew did a very good job of placing their pricing to where it needed to be in order to gain a larger market share and to sales. Overall, the company was pretty much on the verge of taking the lead, in my opinion, if the rounds actually developed more and more. Team Digby did an excellent job at creating a large market share while putting, I believe, having to shift one of their products in one segment and shifting it over to another one. And I believe it was within the high segmentation that they were able to do that on, which was a very good move on their part. Team Baldwin and Team Erie also did have larger market shares at the end of the actual Capsim game. But Erie, we saw that they weren't really gaining as much of a profit to make it worth doing all the expenditures, as well as Baldwin pretty much investing very heavily early and basically coming up slow on their profit margins. They also did have a high return on assets, and that it is also due to investing heavily early. Now I'll give you an overview of some of the surprises that occurred with our company and during this journey with the Capsim simulation. Early returns were very high for us because of what we did. We invested in TQM. That allowed us our margins to be very high compared to the rest of the industry. While looking at some of the scores, I believe this is due to other teams not really heavily investing into that aspect, and I feel like it would have been a much different story if some of the other teams did so. Also, I was surprised of how our balanced scorecards were calculated, and how some of the points were shifted in different areas. So, for an example, if we invested into and increased automation, maybe some of the points in our production would have, increased as well, and our profits may have decreased. It was really difficult also to pretty much predict what inventory that we had to, accumulate for, because calculating the industry behavior is really hard to predict that sometimes. So we would either undersell and lose out on profits and or oversell, but not have a lot of profit inside. So we really have to pick your poison with some of these business decisions. And so that was one of the surprising things for us. And as far as market shares and how quickly they shifted between round to round, depending on, poor calculations or even not investing enough money into a certain segment. So this is our team core competencies. This is only a few of them, what we can name, which we felt that were most important to us creating our strategies and going about round to round how we would make decisions. One is collaboration. That's the obvious one. We did work together, because with the Capsim, one aspect you have to communicate one aspect of the company to another in order to, make up for either losses or to accommodate really the plan. So as far as production and research and development, knowing how we're going to automate, how much it will cost, how we're going to market, how we're going to know how much the sales we're going to go to, that pretty much adjusted our, strategy. Also having awareness, seeing what other companies are doing and how we can pretty much make up for the losses, because they, invested heavily into, management, heavily into marketing. I'm sorry. And then those are some of the things that you have to be aware of and learning how to adjust those things. Also, strategic thinking also plays a key part in all of this, knowing, when to do certain actions within the business, within the strategy implementations. Lastly, trust is also important, because you need to make sure you're trusting your teammates in order to make the right decision. And that's something that we did as a group, and we feel like by it, we were able to, operate effectively.
Our team's highest culture score was hierarchy with a total of 68. Having knowledge of our team's culture helped our organization as a whole, because each individual knew their role and was placed in a role that they were most capable of doing. This includes knowledge of how the industry works and what processes are needed to achieve goals. Our team has performed well in the competitive rounds because we were able to take risks and see what procedures work and what we should adhere to. The relationships that I have identified between team culture, scores, and company performances were influenced by the strength of the respective culture dimension, as is dependent on a situational basis. For example, in the regression analysis, the team market culture score was very high and correlated with the team's success, as it was highly competitive within the simulation. However, other team culture scores has shown to have a weak relationship with the team's success, and this indicates that results aren't always directly correlated through a multi-dimensional study. The main method we used as a team structure was delegating tasks. This allowed us to finish working quicker. Also, each team member was able to focus on one part, and then after we finished, we all talked about what changes we made and if we had any suggestions or different thoughts on the changes. It made the time we spent working on our simulation more efficient. Delegating the tasks also meant that each person would be held accountable for their part. If someone did not finish their part, it would not get done, or another team member would have to stop what they were doing to finish their part. When delegating works out the way it is meant to, it will help build trust among the team. Our team, for the most part, shared the reins at certain moments in the competition. There was never a clear leader. Therefore, delegating the task was very easy, and no one had a problem with what we asked them to do. We learned many lessons from the simulation, but the four that I thought stuck out the most were: how well you start is a key indicator of how you perform and finish. In our practice rounds, we did not make changes at the beginning so much. That put us in a hole that we could not completely get out of. when the competition started, we made a lot of changes at the beginning, and our success showed that that was the right thing to do. The second lesson I felt that was important that is that when we make decisions, it is important for everyone to be on the same page. We realized that when we could come to similar conclusions without falling for groupthink, everything went much smoother. I believe this was a huge part of our success. We were like-minded when it came to making decisions for our company. The third lesson was sometimes you have to spend money to make money. In the practice rounds, we thought, if we spend money, it's just going to hurt our profits, which it does at the beginning, but we quickly realized that if we did not invest in our marketing, that we would fall behind in the segments. Also, we had to invest in our employees for things like training so they would become more efficient, thus being able to make more products. Automation played a very important role in our company's success as well. But it was also the key takeaway from spending money is you also have to spend it at the right time. We figured out that we need to take the hit early so it would pay off later. The final lesson that I think we learned was taking risk is very important when trying to grow your business. In the practice rounds, we did not want to make big changes because we didn't know how it would turn out. But that is what is needed sometimes to separate yourself from your competitors. In the competition, we began making changes that other companies were not making, and even though it hurt us at first, it put us ahead in the later rounds. We did not know what was going to happen when we did it, but we still took the leap. I think that's a very important takeaway to get from the simulation.
We has identified them as our key competitors in the rounds. First, we are going to be examining the return on assets. Each team started the competition with a negative return on assets. Return on assets is an indicator of how well a company utilizes its assets by determining how profitable a company is relative to its total assets. ROA is best used when comparing similar companies or comparing a company to its previous performance. During the first round, Andrews had the best return with negative 1.58%, while Chester came in with negative 3.8% return. However, the second round, our team Chester was able to beat our competitors with an ROA of 8.3%, while the second closest team to our ROA was Digby at 0.2%. During the third round, our ROA dropped drastically to 1.8%, while we still received the highest ROA. Halfway through this competition, we still led our competitors in ROA and came in at 7.1%. However, the fifth round, while we still grew from 7.1% to 8.7%, we were not leading our competitor Andrews in this round, as they went from 5.1% to a drastic 16.3%. The sixth round, we saw a drastic improvement from the previous round and nearly doubled our ROA to bring it to 14.2%, while Andrews still led at 18.3% in their ROA. The seventh round, we received our highest ROA at 15.7%, and this happened to be the highest ROA of the round. In the final round, we received a return on assets of 12.1%. This is not the highest ROA of the round, as Andrews came in with a total return on assets of 24.9%. Here's a graphical representation of our ROA data. This makes it easier to see who had higher return on assets for longer amounts of time. It also makes it easier to see the trends of the return on assets for each of the companies. The graph makes it easier to see the growth and return on assets that our company had throughout each of the rounds. Next, we will be examining the profit of each of the companies. This table shows how in the first round, each company had negative profits. However, during the second round, we were the only team who received the negative profit at negative $8,084,503, while Andrew saw a drastic increase to $10,497,465. This can be attributed to our company focusing more heavily on TQM than other teams in earlier rounds. After the third round, we saw our TQM profit strategy pay off, as We were the only team who received positive profits in larger amounts than our competitors. Each round we grew drastically until the last round, where we went from $26,378,823 to $22,333,087. During the seventh round, we received our highest profit of $26,378,824. This graph shows our profits over each round compared to Digby and Andrews. This helps shows the trends of our profits and how they grew each round. This helps us understand our spending is compared to our income to ensure that our company is able to have a long life. This just makes it easier to see our profits from round to round. Next, we are going to go over Chester's balanced scorecard results. As we adjusted our strategy, we saw our results from the balanced scorecard increase. We finished our first round with a score of 47 and ended with a score of 64 in the last, which shows a drastic change. We were able to achieve higher scores towards the end of the simulation as we had learned the correct way to use each decision to receive the best score possible. Our highest score came from round 6, where we received 71 points out of the possible 100. Finally, I will be comparing our overall performance to Andrews and Digby. For cumulative profit, the highest possible profit was $109,481,107, which was achieved by Digby. Our team's cumulative profit was $105,573,508, which is not too far behind Digby. Next, we will be examining return on assets total scores. Andrew received the highest return on assets of 8.47%, while our team Chester was very close with a return on assets of 8.01%. Next, we will be looking at market share. None of our key competitors reached the highest market share of 22.65. However, Chester did receive 17.58, which is a low score as stated earlier in our presentation. Finally, looking at final scores. Our team's final score was 86.4, which was extremely close to Andrew's high score of 86.7. We remained extremely competitive the entire simulation with our numbers.